Okay, let's go.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Spooky Mysteries. I am your host, Joe Rios. I know this intro is a little different than normal, but we don't ever keep anything the same, ever. Today's episode is going to be over awesome topic. This is the best topic I could find. I really love this. It is over Miriam Rodriguez. I forgot her last name. Martinez. Where did I put that? That just appeared somewhere. Cool. There. Put it in the chat for y'all. Miriam Rodriguez Martinez, who is basically the real life John Wick. She suffered a great loss. She turned into one of Mexico's greatest activists for lost children or lost family members, and she changed everything. Let me start off with my little intro here. Miriam Rodriguez La Valiente. She was a Mexican activist who fought for justice for her daughter Karen. Okay, whatever. Sorry about that. For her daughter Karen, who was kidnapped and murdered in 2012. Miriam's search. Let me start over because I got distracted there. Miriam Rodriguez La Valiente. She was a Mexican activist who fought for justice for her daughter Karen, who was kidnapped and murdered in 2012. Miriam's search for truth and justice led her to uncover a web of corruption and deceit that went all the way to the top. She was a true heroine, and her story is a testament to the power of a mother's love. And that is true. Like, her story is a testament to everything. So, because I don't have any pulled up, I've been busy researching this. Okay. So, Miriam is real life John Wick. Now, why do I say this? The MO of the cartels is one thing and one thing only. They will, depending on where you're at, like if you're on the highway, if you're driving, they'll pull up beside you, they'll pull up in front of you, they'll block you in, and then they'll wait. They'll wait for you to honk, they'll wait for you to try to go by, and when you do, that's it. Because they're going to cut you off again, and this time run you off the road or do something, and they're either going to, I hate to say it, but they're going to, murder you, kidnap you. One of those things, if not both. And then they'll take your vehicle, depending on the type of vehicle it is. Or if you're lucky, that's all they're going to do is take your vehicle. So because of that, life is very dangerous in those cities in Mexico where the cartels are rampant. And it's insane because you don't know what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. They'll just come after you. And I'm cautious of it too because I have family over there. But it's just one of those things where you cannot let them get to you. So she went after every single one of the cartel members that had to do with her daughter's disappearance, and she took care of business. Now, before then, she was just a humble worker. She just worked, did nothing, had kids, raised a family. She was a loving mother for all accounts and purposes that we know. But on January 20th, all that was about to change to one of her daughters named Karen Rodriguez. She was working with her mother at their family business in San Fernando when she was running an errand in her family's work pickup truck. See, now, like I said, a work truck. That means they wanted the truck. There's always a chance that that's what they're looking for. And depending on what you're doing or what you look like, they're going to be like, you could be valuable. You and your truck are coming with us. Like me, I am American. They see my plates. They're going to do one of two things. They're going to try to get money out of me, or they're going to take my car. And a lot of times it's going to be both if you don't know how to handle the situation. If you overreact and try to do something foolish, you're going to be murdered on the spot, and they're going to use that as a tactic to extort money out of your family, no matter what. Even though they're going to be like, if you want to see them alive, send us like $10,000. And a lot of times you'll never see those family members again because they're not going to hold up to the word, depending on the cartel. Some cartels have, I hate to say it, but they have a moral code that they go by, and other cartels, they do not. It depends on who you're dealing with, and the one she was dealing with was the latter. They did not have a moral compass. And I'll get into that later because there's two different types of cartels. Like I said, one that actually has a moral code and the other one that just in it for what cartels do best, money. So again, she was running an errand for her family. She was preparing to merge lanes into traffic when two trucks pulled up beside her. Like I said, that's how they stop you. They'll pull up beside you, tell you to slow down, or get in front of you and block you, and then they'll get down with guns drawn and everything to get you out of your vehicle. Now, if you don't know how to handle the situation, you're going to lose a lot more than your vehicle. Let's see. They jumped down, pulled up on either side of her, and stopped. Armed men jumped out of these trucks and broke into hers and drove off with her in it. So they took the car and truck. Then they drove Karen to her family's home and laid her on her living room floor, bound and gagged, as they ransacked the entire home. And there was a knock at the door. He was Karen's uncle. He was a mechanic. He had stopped by to do work that he had promised on the family's truck. The kidnappers then bound the unsuspecting uncle and fled with him and Karen from the family's home. So, unfortunately, uncle was just trying to help. And if I'm not mistaken, this wasn't really her uncle. It was like Mexican families, we always have un tío. You know, it's our uncle. Like my kids, they have their uncle. It's my homeboy Mark. I've known him since I was in second grade. So he is, for all intents and purposes, their uncle. And then I got my brothers, which are my kids' uncles. Mexican family is, we run on the real assumption of you pick and choose your family, and those are people that are going to be with you for the rest of your life. Now, they may come and go, but in the long run, they're going to come back. So they took off. They took her and they went to her home. So if this cartel was probably from the area, so they knew her, they knew who she was, they knew she had a family business. So they were probably going to go after her truck and after money. So they went to her house, took her there, and they were trying to get money. They're trying to ransack the place, look for whatever they could to get money, and also take off with the truck. If the uncle hadn't shown up, she probably would have been beaten and left for dead, which means that there would have been a higher chance of them finding her alive. But with the simple fact that the uncle showed up and complicated things, they're not going to stick around because you don't know who's going to show up after that. Now you got to worry about two people. One person that was on errand, so that person's going to be expected to be gone for, depending on what the errand was, for a few hours. You know, from 45 minutes to a few hours. They could have been just going up the road to the bank and back, which would only take like an hour depending on where you are in town, or going home, going to the mercado, to the store to get like whatever you need, the bank, to run a couple errands. So Karen could have been gone half the day and her mom would never have thought twice. Now, like I said, the uncle showed up. That complicates things now because they're not going to want to have any witnesses. They probably would have just beat her, taken her truck, and left her. But now, like I said, the uncle's there and things are changing. I saw something. And things are changing. So now they took him. Here go, my mouse does weird stuff sometimes. So now it's her and her uncle in the back of a truck being taken by these guys. And she's probably like, why me right now? The uncle was, like I said, not really an uncle, like a family friend. So eventually Karen's mom's going to find out because now it's not just her daughter, it's her uncle. So when Karen's mother learned of what had happened to her daughter and her friend, she sat down. She sat down and planned a sit down with these guys because it's the cartel. She has to have a sit down with them. So she finds them, she meets with them, and she's begging for their lives. She's literally begging for their, like, what do you need me to do? And her husband were sitting down face to face with members who insisted they had no idea what happened to Karen, and the cartels did not have her, but he offered to help. So this guy wasn't in the loop on everything that was happening. So this was probably happening a spur of the moment type of situation, which I hate to say it, but it happens. And they're not going to communicate every single thing that happens. They've probably been authorized by their leaders to do these things, but they're not going to tell every member of their cartel what's going on. So, or this could just be another exploitation tactic. They're like, hey, someone in a cartel has her. We don't know who it is, but you give us some money, we'll help you find her. And that's exactly what they did. They said, hey, we don't have her. We don't know nothing about it, but we can help you for $2,000. So while they're doing all this, the guy's, his communication device is going off constantly. which means that he knows something's going on. They're, like I said, they're just extorting more and more money out of the situation. So while they're doing all this, someone on the radio, because they have radios, cartel members have they carry three different things. They carry a gun or a weapon. They carry a cell phone, and they carry a radio, like old school police scanner radio. Why? Because their cell phone can be bugged. The government can hack into it, whatever, right? And I've talked about this through cell phones being hacked and bugged by the US government. It led to one of the biggest disasters in Mexico history. In my home state of Allende, Coahuila, home state and town in Mexico, where my family's from, and there was a massacre that happened there. And I'm gonna finish that story. I'm gonna do a part 2 pretty soon. But it happened because they found cell phone numbers, they tracked them, they did all that, and it got leaked. So they carry cell phones, right? And they also carry radios, because you can't really hack a radio unless you have another station, another ham radio, and you're looking old school for these radio stations. So they can just use code and they can get away with a lot more as long as it's within the town. But if they're going to communicate like cross country, then they're going to use their cell phones. But if they're going to communicate like from where I live right now, and I wanted to talk to somebody like we're at my kid's school and I had a strong enough radio, I'll just use that. No one could hear what I'm saying except for me and that person. And they know, like, if I was on a specific channel, or, someone could, if they're not hacking, if they're just dialing in randomly, they can eventually pick it up. But that's what they do. It's different ways of communication that prevent people from listening in who aren't supposed to, especially if they're using code. But someone messed up on the radio. They used his real name, and his name was Sama, S-A-M-A. So they shouldn't have used that. So she remembers his name. She stores it in the back of her head, and she goes to the bank, and she gets a loan out for $2,000. Now, $2,000 in Mexico is a lot of money. Let's do the conversion rate for today. $2,000 pesos Mexican. That's 39,964 pesos. That's a lot of money. The dollar is strong right now. It's about 20 to 1 right now. When I was growing up, it was 10 to 1. That was a long time ago. But now it's 20 to 1. So she gets the money. And, at this point in Mexico's time in history, it was very frequent. So they had a loan system set up for this very specific reason. Like, kidnappings were at an all-time high, and banks were able to get that money to give to the cartels. So, like, they were able to pull money very quickly from banks to the people's hands in record time. Like, most times when, if I go to the bank right now, I'm like, hey, I need to get a loan for $1,000, right? They're going to run a background check. They're going to run a work credit history. They're going to run everything, and they'll be like, we'll get back to you in 2 days, which is why in a week, up to a week, right? Which is why different companies, loan companies exist, because they're like, oh, we'll get you your credit. We'll get you all your information, and we'll get you a loan same day. But then the interest rate's 30%, and you're paying that off for the next 10 years, right? So, but they were doing this so frequently that they was just going in circles. Because again, you're giving the money to the cartel. The cartels, 9 times out of 10, depending on how big that town is, they own the banks, right? So they're putting that money right back into their account. And it could be a way of them cleaning money because they have dirty business dealings. It could be them cleaning their money, washing it, making it legitimate. We don't know what they do, right? So they have all these ransoms that keep happening daily. So they handed over the money to Sama, and he stops talking to them. He ghosts them after a week. And that's when Karen starts getting calls from other cartel members. So now they're like, okay, good. She was able to get this money the first time around. She's going to be able to get this money again and again. And they're going to basically run her dry because they don't know if she got the money. They don't know how she got the money. She could have got the money from her savings. She could have had the money on hand, hidden somewhere. She could have got it any which way, right? But she had to go to the bank. They don't know this. It's not like she handed them the money and be like, and here's my loan application too, because I ain't got no money. Y'all got to see that I really want to get my daughter back, but hey, I got to pay interest, so y'all got to leave me something, right? She's not doing that. She's just giving them the money and saying, I want my daughter back. I know I'm trying to make light of the situation, but this is a very serious situation. So now she's getting calls from other cartel members saying they have Sama's money and they have Karen. So now what that tells me is that since Sama's name got leaked, he had to go. So he may or may not have been alive in this situation. I don't know how far it goes, right? But now they got the money and they got Karen because they're saying they have both Sama's money and Karen. So that means Sama was doing something he wasn't supposed to be doing. And they instructed Miriam that for Karen's return, they would need an additional 500 handed over, and Marion gave it to them a few weeks later. Miriam, I don't know why I said Marion. Miriam. So Miriam got more money and gave it to them. Now, I hate to say this, one of these things that you have to understand is that if you're doing this with the cartels and you're giving them money, they're gonna keep asking for it. It has to come to a point. I hate to say it has to come to a point, and I know you want to get your loved ones back, but you have to tell them no. You like, I got no more money. We're dry. Because at that point, one of two things happen. So, and I keep saying this a lot because there's all these different scenarios that could happen. Like I said, if they're going to take your car, they're going to pull over, beat you, and take your car. So they're going to beat you and take your car, right? Or they're going to take you in your car. And if they take you in your car, you're going to die. I hate to say it. They're going to beat you, leave you somewhere for dead, and the chances of them finding you are going to be slim to nil. But the chances of them finding you is going to be slim to nil. Or like I said, those are your two options. So now if you keep giving them money and then you're going to run dry eventually. No one's going to give you money. So it comes to a point where you have to tell them no. Because if you keep giving them money, after the first or second time that you give them money, they're going to ask again. And I guarantee you by that third time, the chances of your loved one being still alive drop down drastically. And I mean drastically. I hate to say it, like after the second time, just tell them straight up, no, I don't have anything. You've taken everything. Because like I said, something's going to happen. Option A, they're going to return. Your loved one's going to be dropped off somewhere, badly beaten, but dropped off somewhere. Or option B, and that's the option no one wants. Option B, they disappear forever and you never find them. The chances of you finding them are going to be whenever they get brought down and a mass burial site is discovered. That's when you're going to find them. If they can even identify them. So these are all these different scenarios. And like I said, I hate to put it that way, but you have to tell them no after a certain amount of time. Because, like I said, they're just going to keep asking. It's not going to stop. So after she got them the money, again, they ghosted her. Like I said, they're after her money. They're trying to get her money because they know who she is. They took her daughter to her house to ransack the place while because they were looking for money. They knew she was a business person, a business owner. So she lost contact with the new members. No further response from these new members. Miriam told her oldest daughter, Azalea, who was living with her at the time, as her and her husband had separated, that she knew Karen was coming back, and she was likely, So she told her daughter, like, hey, your sister's most likely dead. We're not going to be able to find her. And like I said, it's because they know these situations. They know what happens so many times that they're not going to find them. So that's the grim story. Like, if you have someone that gets kidnapped, and a lot of times, like in the States, right, we see like SVU, CSI, things like that, right, with based on true events. That's a writer's dream word right there, based on true events, which means that they can embellish as much as they want. But a lot of times when people get kidnapped, you get them back because they just want some money, quick cash, get your money, boom, you're done for, right? But with these organizations, they don't care. They got a few bucks from you and your kid, that's just another body for them to dispose of. And they have the people to dispose of them for them. The chances of you getting your family back again after the second or third time of them asking money, You're never getting him back. She tells her daughter Azalea, her other daughter Azalea, that there's a high chance your sister's been killed, and she's not coming home. She's dead. But she also made a promise, and this is where I say she is the embodiment of John Wick. John Wick was probably based off of her. She could probably take down John Wick. She said she would not rest until everyone responsible was taken care of. So what she did until the day she died, she hunted down every single one of those members. And she meant what she said with every bone in her body, that she was going to go after them. And she would make them pay for everything that they did, right? And that's what she did. It did not stop her at all. Like I said, on January 24th, she got the phone call, right? And the big gang that had taken her was Las Setas, the cartel, the biggest cartels in Mexico. And a little backstory about the original cartels, because I think now the new cartels are La Nueva Generación, which they're worse than the cartels. They're worse than Las Zetas. I hate to say that. That's something hard to say, because these guys came in, took over everything, and messed everything up for a lot of people. So the Zetas came about the time that Joaquin El Chapo Guzman was taken into custody. He escapes, but he gets caught again. It's one of those things, right? But it's about that time. So now there's no big cartel leader. So things are off balance. And these guys come out of nowhere. They come out of left field. Like, there's been whisperings and talks of a new drug cartel. They've probably been around for a while, right? But not big. They were nothing compared to El Chapo Guzman. And that's his name. He's the big boss, right? But when he got arrested, they came out of nowhere. And these guys are all former military in Mexico. They are trained. They are ruthless. They are ready to go. And that's what they did. They took over everything. They slaughtered people. They left people on the side of roads, bodies hanging from bridges as a sign to those areas like, hey, we own this. And it became a bloodshed in Mexico that is still felt to this day. It is one of the most horrific things that's ever happened. Now, this is where a lot of people separated, where they're like, I'm for El Chapo Guzman. I'm against cartels in general. Now, El Chapo Guzman, he did some good, which is not, he's one of those cartels that had a conscience. They had a moral code. In his area, he took care of people, gave them money, gave them whatever, right? He took care of the people in his community, which is weird to say, because he was the biggest and most influential cartel member in history. I think he even made Forbes top 100 of the top 100 richest people in the world. That's how much money he had. You hear about, like, what's his name? The guy from Colombia, the drug dealer, right? The drug lord. I can't remember his name. And that's a shame. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But he's one of the biggest one. But he, like, eventually at one point had a budget just for rubber bands to hold his money. So did him, right? So did El Chapo. That's how much money he was bringing, that he had to have a budget set up for his money to, like, rubber band that stuff. So that's just a little backstory. So the Zetas, they are ruthless. So she paid for the ransom, and there's different numbers going around, like 2,500. On this other site that I'm reading, 77,000. So who knows, right? It could be inflation from the Mexican dollar to American. It could be anything. So we're not going to focus on the money, because who cares? So once she discovered that, once she figured out that she wasn't getting her money back, she became vengeance incarnate. She became John Wick. But she also joined the ranks of hundreds of thousands of victims of Mexican cartel violence, which is what led her to become one of the top protesters in her area in her time. I gotta stop and get a drink every now and then. But unlike the vast majority of those other victims, Miriam refused to be silenced or paralyzed by fear. In the face of great danger, she transformed herself into an angel of vengeance, where the police had ignored her and were being useless. Because in Mexico, I hate to say it. No, you know what? I don't hate to say it. In Mexico, a lot of the cops are corrupt, which is what happened in Allende, which is what happens in like every other city, which I've seen it with my own eyes. Like growing up, I've been to Mexico so many times. Growing up, my grandfather took me to Mexico one time, and we get pulled over by a cop. And this cop tries to hustle down my grandpa for money. My grandpa's from Mexico. Like he grew up, born and raised in Mexico. He told that dude, like, I know your story. I know what you're doing. You're not getting nothing from me. You see the Texas plates. You thought I was going to be an easy mark. Give me a ticket or I'm leaving. And that dude just got back in his car. My grandpa just whoop, gone. We just took off. We went back. We went home like nothing happened. To this day, I remember that. Like he may not have said all that stuff. But my grandpa's a tough man. Like there was something happened to him one time when he was at a Walmart. Someone tried to like my grandpa was a nice guy, so someone asked him for some money, and my grandpa used to have his own business stuff like that. So he carried like a fucking stack because he's old school Mexican. You carry money with you at all times. You put a little bit in the bank, but you carry yours with you because in case of emergencies, you got some funds on you. And he paid bills and stuff like that, right? So he goes down. The guy asks him for some money. And my grandpa's a nice guy. So he goes, yeah, sure, why not? He pulls out his wallet and goes to give him, a little bit of cash. And the guy snatches his wallet. My grandpa goes running because this guy runs through the Walmart and he was going to go around to the other side and take off. My grandpa just took off on the outside, caught up to him, pulled out his knife on him and held him down. Security showed up. And police showed up. Security knew who my grandpa was because that's a local neighborhood Walmart. So they knew us. So they knew who he was. This was before Walmart became Super Center, when it was just Walmart. So they knew who he was. They vouched for him, like, we know him. This is his name, so and so. And he was like, yeah, check the wallet, see if his name's in it. And his ID is right there. So the guy gets arrested because he took my grandpa's wallet. I was gonna say my dad, but my grandfather raised me, so he's like my dad. So, like, he's a badass, right? So he knows the game. He knows what's going on. He doesn't let people take advantage of him like that. So when it happened in Mexico, he was like, whatever. Give me my ticket or I'm leaving. The cop turned face, walked back to his car, and let us go. We left. So my grandpa's a badass, right? Okay, so I'm sorry. I get sidetracked. I got great stories. So she became, like I said, an angel of vengeance. She became like a John Wick, right? So where the police were ignorant and weren't able, they were ignoring the situation because they didn't want to attract attention to themselves. Because the cartels, they don't care if you're a cop, if you're government leader, if you're military, Mexican military, they did not care. If you got in their way or they knew you were trying to do something to stop them, that's it. Not just you, your friend, and your friend's friend, and their family members were dead. They were just going to stop everyone or everything that was you. So they were inept. They're not going to help a lot, right? Because they're afraid for their jobs or they're on the payroll. So she did the job for them. She tracked down and eventually brought them to justice, right? So she knew one of their names. His name was Sama, right? She figures out his name and she uses that information. She goes on to Facebook, whatever, and she finds him. And she finds his family, like not his family, but like his friends, so other cartel members. She went through social media and found clues. Carrying a pistol, Rodriguez often hunted down her daughter's kidnappers by herself, sometimes pursuing them on foot until the police arrived. So she followed them. She held them at gunpoint and gave the cops a chance to do their job. So take them in, right? If I'm not mistaken, what was that? My voice just dried out. If I'm not mistaken, she killed a few of them. So the way she was doing things, it made her a hero. Again, because she's doing something that no one else is doing. She's standing up to these cartel members. Something that is unheard of at the time. So she would go after them, hold them at gunpoint, or sometimes she'd just shoot them. But a lot of times she put them in, she sent them on their way. By 2015, the Setas were no longer the dominant force in Mexico, not the way they had been in the 2010s. So they were losing power, right? They committed and inspired such horrendous brutality that the government had no choice but to break them. A classic Icarus tale. The Setas that remained were the products of communities ravaged by violence, but they were no pioneers. Where life had been cheapened, they simply paid in pennies. So by this time, they still have power. They still are controlling communities and areas, but they're not as together as they used to be because they were, like I said, they were vicious. They were everywhere. They took over and they ravaged the country. And America stepped in, Mexico stepped in. Why? Because number one rule that a lot of the gangs and cartels have in Mexico is you don't touch the Americans. Why? Because it's not going to end well for you. They're going to come after you. And after like the second American was kidnapped or killed in Mexico, that was it. That was it. They were on it. They were like, no, this ain't gonna happen. Like after the first one, I think Mexico sent people down there and America went down there, sent representatives down there to try to figure out what happened. I think even a cartel member showed up, like one of the big bosses showed up, was like, look, my bad. You know, whenever your people come down here for tourists, your tourists come to Mexico, tell them to stay in the tourist area. Tell them not to venture out. And that's where that rule comes from. Like in Mexico, like if you're gonna go down there, go to a touristy spot. Don't go to towns. Don't go to border towns. Don't go to you know areas that are not for meant for tourists because that's the understanding. Miriam thought a lot of the other families with whom she now shared the recurrent pain of a disappeared one. There were tens of thousands of families nationwide. Like she also runs an organization where she takes care of these people. She takes care of these people because she's helping them out, and she's helped a lot more. She's inspired people now. So now they're not sitting behind just hoping for someone else. She's given them a light. She is now a hero, a legend. She is doing something that the communities, authorities could not do, giving them hope. So Sama has been discovered, right? So I know I'm jumping around the place. So she's after everybody. She's gonna hunt them down. She holds them at gunpoint, and one of two things: she see they either die or they go to jail. So there's a lot of things, right? So let's go back to how this all started. So she discovers Sama. His radio goes off. They say his real name, which is an amateur move. Don't use real names. Do y'all think Joe Rios is my real name? No. But would I give y'all my real name? No. One day, maybe way down in the future, but not today. That ain't gonna happen, especially with all the stories that I do and the things I tell y'all about certain organizations. Nah, y'all ain't getting my real name. So she finds out where Sama lives because she starts looking for him. She finds him on Facebook and she was able to identify his friends by his pictures, right? So she identified one of his friends by her ice cream store uniform and spent hours waiting outside the shop until he appeared. And then she followed him. So she finds out where one of his friends works. And then she goes to that ice cream shop and she waits there. Now it is a waiting game for what is about to happen next. So she changes her appearance, her hair and everything, and she finds an old uniform. And she needs a way, this is part of her disguise. She needs a way to go around the neighborhood undetected. So she tells him she's doing a poll, a census. She's doing something, right? So she uses that to be able to go into the neighborhood undetected because now she's acting like a government official or she's doing a poll where she can just go do whatever. Not do whatever, but she's able to go in there and communicate with people and find stuff. She finally finds someone who's going to help her, a federale. Now, federales are hit or miss because they are either bought by the government, bought by Mexico, or bought by the cartels, or they're upstanding. They're trying to make it work. They're turning their worlds upside down because they are the good guys. It's hard to find. So she has all this information on them, right? And she finally meets someone who's going to help her, a federale, and she pulls out her files. She's been doing research. She has files on these guys, and she puts them on the table, and the cop's like, damn, you did this by yourself? Like, we got a whole department here. We don't got this kind of information. You found where they live. You found out who their friends are. You found out where their day jobs are. I mean, she found everything, and they were blown away by her information. The detail and information that she gathered was more than what they were able to do at the time. Frankly, she put them to shame a little bit, right? So now they know they're going after Sama. because she gave him money. She gave him money. So he is directly linked to this situation. Like I said, he might have died because they said they had his money and Karen. So that means he might have been doing something wrong. But Sama just turned into money. He just turned it in. So he wasn't doing anything wrong. See, I jumped ahead. I jumped ahead without knowing the full story. So now she gives him the information. She tells him, this is where you're going to find him. This is, she told him everything. She's like, this is where you find him. This is where he goes for lunch. This is what time he goes to the bathroom. She gave him a detailed list of what this man's life was outside of the cartels. So they go after him. They go to arrest him, and he escapes. He gets away from them. But they eventually find him and capture him, right? And then under interrogation, he gives up the names of other cartel members. And they shed more light on Karen's abduction. But, now that he dropped dime on them, his life's in danger. So they better put him in prison. Because that's not going to go good for them. Okay, cool. So he drops dime on them. So he can't be a part of that life no more. Because guess what? He dropped dime. If he goes back to them, it's not going to end well. You don't give up the cartels like that. You don't say, hey, Samuel over there did it. A fucking Armando over here did it. He held her down. You don't do that. They're done. He's done. So he's most likely going to go to prison and go under solitary confinement because he's not going to make it a day outside of that. And he's like, okay, cool. I'm going to work with y'all. Y'all help, y'all keep me alive. I'll give y'all all the names of the cartels that were involved in this situation. And I'll even take you to where she is. Now, Miriam already knows that her daughter is not alive. There's the highest possibility. There's only like the teeny tiniest microscopic sliver of hope that she's still alive. But deep down, everybody knows it's a done deal. So they shed light on all the situation and take her to the ranch where Karen finds her daughter's scarf, a cushion from the truck, and one of her femurs. So they killed her, destroyed the truck, and just left her there, right? And, that's what happens with these cartel members. The more money you give them, the higher possibility that you're not coming back alive. I hate to say it. You might just have to be like, hey, I can't give you any money. You picked the wrong family. We don't have anything. Please let him go. Your best bet is to beg. If you can give them a few $100s, be like, this is all we have. That's better than nothing. But don't go to the bank and get loans out. You could talk to the government. You could talk to the police, military, whoever you want, and they'll try to set up a sting and give you all this money. But the second they find out you work with the cops, it's over. The second they find out that you have money, it's over, because now they're going to extort you for even more money. So after finding her daughter's remains, she's renewed in her search to find who all of these people are that were involved in this situation. And I keep saying situation because it is a horrible situation. It's one of these things that you don't want to happen, but it happens more often than not in Mexico. She told police, and she told them that she was incomplete. Although she had found her daughter, nothing would ever return to her normal life. She's missing a piece of her. So how is she going to ever be whole again? So this is where she becomes a vigilante. So she's already proved that she can find him. She found one. They arrested him. He dropped dime on everybody, and they found where her daughter was. Right? But they didn't catch everybody. There's still people out there that that were a part of this that have not paid justice. In all, Miriam Rodriguez would hunt down 10 cartel members who played a role in her daughter's kidnapping. Many had left the cartel and attempted to start over as born-again Christians or flower vendors, but Rodriguez had little sympathy for them. That is cold-blooded. And it's hard to get out of the cartel life because a lot of times to get out, you got to die. But for them to get out, that tells me that they were probably higher up. And they're like, you know what? We can't do this no more. The power is dwindling. Our reach isn't as strong as it used to be. We're going into hiding. I'm a florist now. Right? I sell paletas on the side. I'm the guy out there on the highway, naranjas, naranjas, but fuck with me. I used to be cartel. That's what these guys are doing. They're putting all that behind them. They want a normal life. They're getting out of that situation that they were a part of. They caused it. They weren't a part of it. Fuck that. They caused it. They were a part of it. They were in it. They chose that life. And like I said, a lot of them were former military members. So they were training and they chose to, as soon as they got out of the military, to pick up guns against their own nation, against their own people. So she had no sympathy for them because they took her daughter. She was going to make sure that they were done. Where was his compassion when they killed my daughter? She said after one of the cartel members was arrested in a chapel, eliciting protests from the congregation. So she got him arrested. Like I said, she's going around holding them at gunpoint, waiting for the cops to show up. She's doing their job for them. She's walking up to them like, hey, you had something to do with my daughter's disappearance. You're going to wait right here until the cops show up and they're going to take you away and try you for what you did to my family. And she did that to one of them in a chapel, in church, probably during Misa, during Mass. And the congregation is like, wait a minute, this is supposed to be a safe place. What's going on? Nah, Miriam did not care. She was like, catch me with that mess. Y'all are not going to sit here and vouch for a killer. He's coming with me. And they get arrested. Boom, one down, right? That's how she was taking these guys out. She showed no fear to people that were putting fear into the nation. This was all in Mexico. So she made waves in San Fernando. Not only was she going toe to toe with a powerful enemy, but Rodriguez was also challenging a way of life. She seemed to recognize the danger of her work and remarked that she had no fear of death. Because they took her family. She had nothing at that. Well, she still had more. She still had other family. She still had other kids, but she lost her daughter, one of her daughters. And her life was never going to be the same. She was going to make sure they paid for it. And she told him, like, I don't care if they kill me. She told one of her friends. And her words, these next words that she say are going to be like a prophecy. So, I died the day they killed my daughter. I want to end this. I'm going to take out the people who hurt my daughter and they can do whatever they want to me. So, like I said, she was an activist for these people she was an activist against the cartels. In Mexico, she's one of the top tier activists for people who've had their families taken. But after she found out exactly what happened to her daughter, the gloves were off. She was going to take this a step further. In March 2017, 29 inmates dug a tunnel and escaped from a penitentiary in Ciudad Victoria, where Karen's abductors had been imprisoned. Miriam Rodriguez asked for police protection and local police agreed to send patrols. But on May 10th, the day when Mexico celebrates Mother's Day, Dia de las Madres, danger inherent in Rodriguez's work finally caught up to her. The 57-year-old was hobbling up to her front door on crutches because she'd recently broken her foot while chasing somebody. A white Nissan driven by the escaped inmates pulled up in front of her house and they shot her. And they shot her about 12 different times. Her husband found her sprawled on their driveway, her hand in her purse where she kept her pistol. So she was going for her gun. She knew what was about to happen. She was ready, but she wasn't able to. She was not able to. And her death enraged the people across her state. The governor, Francisco Javier Garcia Cabeza de Vaca, wrote on Twitter, the government of Tamaulipas will not allow the death of Miriam Rodriguez to turn into yet another statistic. But the government did arrest two of Rodriguez's killers. A third was killed in a gunfight. Her murder unraveled much of Rodriguez's work. Her son had taken over the collective Rodriguez had started, Colectivo de Desesperados de San Fernando. Desaparecidos, I'm sorry. Colectivo de los Desaparecidos de San Fernando. San Fernando's collective for the disappeared. But without her, it dwindled and it slowly faded. So her organization slowly collapsed after her death because without her, she was the hope. you can't have somebody doing all this and then die. You know, it's either you're gonna go at it 100%. They should have ran with it as strong as they could, or it was gonna die. And that's just and her organization just slowly disappeared. So approximately 100,000 people have disappeared in Mexico since 2007, when and then Mexican president declared a war on drugs. When Karen became one of those tens of thousands of innocent people abducted by the cartels, her mother sprang into action. She paid for it with her life. But Miriam Rodriguez found justice for her daughter. Not everyone got along with her, a state official told the New York Times, but you respected her. So, and that is the story, Miriam Rodriguez. That is insane. Like that's a lot. Like there's a lot there. That's a lot to absorb. She changed the way people look at the cartels. They're not as big and as strong as people think. Yes, they have numbers. Yes, they have guns. Should you do this? No. But she gave them a voice and told them it is okay to fear them, but stand up to them. I'm going to see if I can't find a little bit more to read. So let's see. So before then, she had thought little of their plight of the other families, but now she shared the connection. She felt a connection forged by shared trauma. The government remained loath to do much for the cause of the disappeared, and for much of the same reason that Miriam had once dismissed them, there was a whiff of culpability to the victims' tragedies. With resources stretched thin, no one in law enforcement wanted to spend money finding or helping people who were thought to have had only themselves to blame for the misery. The problem with that logic was that it was sometimes true. There were people among the ranks of the disappeared who had participated in organized crime. You could dismiss them without a moral obligation to help, but it also wasn't true of many of the victims. It's a lot of the times you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that's true. That's very true. Because like I said, they do a lot of stuff. If you go to Mexico and you're driving along the highway in the middle of the night, they'll do it during the day too. It doesn't matter what time of day it is. And you're driving and, a blacked out SUV, a dark colored car with tinted windows, or it could just be a Honda Civic, a little Honda hatchback, a little four banger, pulls up and blocks you, and two people jump out. Guess what? That's the cartels. Those are the gangs. They're coming after you. You can Google it. You can look it up on TikTok, Google, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff. There's videos of people driving, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, two cars come up, pull up in front of them, jump out with guns. You have one of two options. You punch it and you go through them, or you stop, get out of the car, and give them the keys, put your hands up, and let them take your car. Do not fight them, because they will not hesitate to kill you. Now, if you watch some of the videos on like YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, whatever, right? You'll get mad. You'll be like, why didn't you just drive through them? If you're not used to crashing into somebody, you're not going to do it. You don't know what to do in these situations when there's a gun pointed at you. Not just one, up to 4 different guns pointed at you, because they roll up in like 1, 2, 3, 4 different cars, and they all jump out. So this is a little word of advice. Anyone that listens to this podcast and anyone up here on TikTok, if you go to Mexico, be safe. Do not stop for random people. If you don't know them, do not stop. I hate to say it, even if they're police, you make it to town first before you stop. I don't care, because like I said, even the police are in their pockets. They could pull you over, arrest you, take you out back, take all your stuff, and you can disappear. And you're being disappeared by the government at that point. That's in their pocket. So what are the odds of them finding you? Tell me. If a policeman wants to make you disappear, I don't care if you're in the States or Mexico. I missed it. They will make you disappear. I had to verify that I'm still on here on TikTok. So I reached up. So they will make you disappear. I hate to say it. That's just what they do. And, I see a lot of the videos on YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, because all my stuff is crazy. If you look at my phone, on my TikTok for spooky mysteries. It's ghosts and true crime. If you look at my personal account on there, it's ghosts, true crime, funny skits, corrupt police officers, all sorts of stuff, because that's a lot of stuff. But on the one for the channel, it's all one thing. It's all just spooky stuff and true crime. But when I watch videos on whatever platform I'm watching them on, and I see somebody, these auditors come up, like, we're making sure you're doing your job right. I'm going to record you. What happens the day you record a cop that actually is corrupt? He takes your phone, takes you out back, and you're done for. That's it. But they had the same thought too. So now they're on it. They're on live. They live stream the whole situation because people have had that thought. Like, what if you run into a cop that's actually corrupt? What's going to stop from snatching your phone, snapping it in half, and shooting you and leaving you for dead? Live stream everything you can, especially if you're dealing with them. But if you're out of country, they don't care if you live stream it. They'll say hi to your audience before they put a bullet in the back of your head, especially if it's the cartel. Corrupt cops, they'll try to cover their face. There's a video of a corrupt cop in Mexico in the police station saying, like, you're not going to file this police report against me. You're going to go to the restroom, think it over, come back, and you're not going to file it. She was threatening this man in a police station. He had his phone low-key recording, like hidden. It's all over my TikTok right now. But like, that's how deep these pockets run for the cartels. And a corrupt cop is not going to care. They're just not. They're going to do whatever they want. So especially if you're in another country, please be safe. But she found some sort of peace. She found her daughter's remains. Trying to find anything else. Yeah. There's a lot of information on what happens. Yeah, so this is a small update. So she had been there. Not an update. This is just something that's popped up. She had been there with the Marines in March of 2014 when the Setas cell had been decimated. She had been there again a few months later in July when forensic specialists had discovered 3 ribs in the silty earth in front of the old red tractor. Suspecting the bones might belong to Karen, she had asked the government to assign a forensic analyst to the case. The process alone had taken months. And so it came as something of a surprise when on January 7th, 2015, the state laboratory reported a positive match with Miriam's and Luis's DNA profiles on the 3 ribs collected back in July of 2014. They were Karen's. So she had some kind of closure, right? She found her remains. Most families, they will take that as a win. But she did not. She took that as motivation. This little old lady from Mexico took that as motivation and tracked down a bunch of the most dangerous cartel members that have faced this earth. Mexico, they spilled so much blood in Mexico. The Setas, former military turning their guns on their own people. She went against them. She tracked them down. She killed 10 of them. Or so the story goes. She killed a bunch of them. And the ones that she didn't kill, she put in prison. And when they escaped, guess what they had in mind? They're like, I'm going to get that old lady. And they did. They got her back on Mother's Day, which I'm going to tell you right now, 100% in my mind, that was not a coincidence. What better revenge than to kill the mother of one of your victims on Mother's Day, the day they're supposed to celebrate being a mother. And they killed her in front of her home. She wasn't fast enough to get her gun and turn around and take him out. Because she would have. Because like I said, her husband found her face down with her hand in her purse. So she was ready to turn around and start shooting back. But they unloaded 12 rounds into her. John Wick got about that many, he could barely move, right? He's fully trained. This is a little old lady. She had a broken leg. She had a broken leg because she already chased down one of these guys the other day and broke her leg trying to catch him. So she was out there every day doing what cops couldn't do. Doing what most people would never dream about doing. Like I said, most people would have stopped, but she was not. that was her going forward. Yeah, I'm just reading more about it. They discovered 206 bones. What happened to the 203? Yeah, no, they were everywhere. Yeah, so this came from one of the florists. If later testimony from the florist was to be believed, so this is one of the guys she brought in because they tried to get out of the life, right? And she found one of them. And this is his testimony. Former cartel member turned florist. And if what he says is to be believed, Karen had been dissolved in acid. Barbara had been. The idea of it was reimagining of horror of a disappeared child. The Setas were not just disappearing people in their state. They were disappearing the disappeared, quite literally erasing their very physical existence. So they were just getting rid of them completely. Not just burying the bodies. So there was no way to track the remains. So when they get a bag of bones, that's a bag of bones. They're not going to sit there and sort it out. So let's see. The problem was that there was no centralized office for tracking when remains were collected, what had become of those remains, and whether they had been tested for DNA. To navigate the Byzantine chain of custody, Miriam would need to reach out to each agency one by one. She sent formal letters to an array of state and federal agencies, asking whether any of them had ever conducted searches at the site of the basurero. To avoid confusion about the location, she included its GPS location. So this site is known as El Basurero, the junkyard, the trash heap. That's what they knew it as. So Miriam knew. She narrowed the time frames to searches conducted in the early months of 2014. She knew that someone had come to collect remains from the exact spot where they had found Karen, and she wanted to make sure that it was the government, to give the government every chance to find Karen. So yeah, she did everything. She found her scarf. She found, her rib. I got to turn off my phone. Notifications down. There you go. Got rid of it. Sorry about that, everybody. So she knew her daughter had been killed there from Cristiano, from Carlos, from her own visit to the site where she had found Karen's scarf. And so she knew their incompetence was the only thing keeping her from burying her daughter properly. There had to be more than just 3 ribs, and the evidence that someone had collected remains earlier and had done so in a sloppy enough way to leave those 3 ribs for the next group to find was inconceivable. It's kind of a mind-boggling thing that the government messed up so much. To know a thing and be denied its truth is an exercise in madness. Miriam had no faith in the government's ability to manage DNA testing, and not necessarily because of some inherent malice or desire to inflict suffering, but because the cruelty of ineptitude would prevail, but that only made it harder to accept. The hope for something better breathed more life into the desperation. She demanded an inquiry. So she wanted everything to change. She wanted the organizations that went through and organized the bones to actually organize the bones and find and bring home those missing people. But with how many people go missing, with how many mass grave sites that they find in Mexico, it's almost impossible. I hate to say it, but they do not have the manpower. They do not have the ability to find and sort through all these bones and find the people who committed these crimes. And to find, they don't have the ability. There's too many people. And a lot of them have disappeared, have turned into, like I said, florists. They're not the people they were before. And it's to sit there and organize all these bones and individually send them in for DNA testing. Mexico doesn't have the manpower for that. And who knows how many of those people are still in their pocket. Who knows how many of these people are still in their pocket. So I'm going to share my screen real quick and I'm going to show y'all what she looks like. And that's going to be the end of the podcast today. Bam. This is Miriam Rodriguez Martinez. It's right there. She single-handedly took out 10 cartel members, arrested so many more. She is a walking legend. These types of people are behind bars because of her. This is from the movie. I think this might actually be my next episode, Cartel Killers. We'll probably do a whole episode over that one day. But the next episode will be part 2 and the ending of the darkest day in Allende. I'm saying it right now. The next episode is going to be the finale of that one. It has been over a year in the making. I'm going to finally close out that chapter. This inspired me to close out that chapter. We're going to close it out. But she stopped. That's her Karen and her mom right there. She didn't let anything stop her. She found out who it was. She took care of it herself. You don't have to always translate. You just want to translate right now. Yeah, she right there. This little handbag right here. Oh man, it's not sharing the screen. It didn't move. Stop. Screen. This one right here. Good. Share. Look at that. That's her handbag. And then there's her gun. They're ready to go. Yep. She took a bunch of them out before they took her out. They escaped and they took her out. And all she wanted was help from the government. She wanted help. She wanted them to do something. And I keep getting dragged back into it because this story is just an amazing story. There's so much behind it that I can't stress enough that this is an amazing person that passed away. Not passed away. She was killed because of how much she was changing things in Mexico. She was hunted down and killed because the cartels feared her. The little old lady was feared by the cartels because she was putting them away. She was putting them down. She was John Wick and the Punisher rolled into one little old lady. So that is it for today. I will see y'all next time on the Spooky Mysteries. And like always, everybody, stay spooky.